Hi, guys. Welcome back to Abigail's Bookshelf. Today, we will be talking about the books that I read in September. I would say September was a very middle of the road reading month for me. I did a little bit more than usual, and everything was just like kind of okay. Nothing, there was like one standout, everything else was just kind of all right, which has made me think a little bit about like what I want to do going forward as far as reading. I'm obviously like always going to be a voracious reader, but I originally set my goal this year to read 70 books, and I've already passed that. And so I pushed it to 100, partly to coincide with a library book challenge that I'm doing. My local library is celebrating 100 years, and so they have 100 book prompts, and then there's a prize if you like do 100. And I've already met the goal, like the prizes that I wanted to meet on 25 and 50. So, and there's like a couple of prompts I don't really want to do. Like they're just not, they're either hard to find books that I want to read for, or just like I can't be bothered to read some stuff. So, will I make 100? Maybe. I think I'll be really close, but I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to meet it. But that said, thinking about my reading goal for next year has kind of been on my mind because I was kind of like looking over my year and I was like, it's like just been okay. Like a lot of books are forgettable, and that's fine. Like that's part of reading, right? Like you're going to read stuff that you don't really remember. But overall, I feel like I've been reading more books that I went into it not expecting to enjoy just to meet a challenge prompt. And I don't love that. I feel like I'm using up a lot of my reading energy on reading stuff that I don't really want to read, but it's just stuff that like would meet my prompt goal. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but that's just kind of what's been on my mind as I looked over this month's reading and the past couple of months reading. So we'll see what happens going forward. Short term, I think I'm just going to like read what I want for the rest of the year and not worry so much about meeting that book challenge. And hopefully I'll get to read some good stuff. There's a lot of stuff on my TBR that I'm really wanting to get to, that I really would love to get to, but again, I push it aside because I have to make my prompts, and that's stupid. So I'm just gonna read what I want from now on, and hopefully that goes better for me than this month did. Now I have to think of an intro. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is Abigail's Bookshelf, where I will just do book reviews, and it won't be anything more complicated than that. So the first book I read this month was The Potency of Ungovernable Impulses by Malka Older. This book is part of the Masa and Platy novella series, which is, if you're unfamiliar, get familiar. It's a series of novellas that are like Agatha Christie, like crime noir on Jupiter or orbiting Jupiter, because you can't really be on Jupiter since it's a gas planet. Anyway, great. I love this series. These books are so much fun, and they're so well written, and they're so atmospheric and so just, oh, I love them. They're so much fun. But this is the third installment, I believe. And this one revolves a little bit more around Platy. The girls are fighting. And Platy gets asked to investigate, to look into, because Platy is a scholar, Masa is an investigator. They're in love, forever soulmates, but they're having a spat. And so Platy is asked by a colleague to go with her to a neighboring university to investigate her cousin's promotion. There is somebody trying to like sabotage this cousin and not let her get her promotion that she wants. And so Platy is like, I'll look into it. She's at this point known for helping on investigations and being a little bit of an amateur sleuth. So Platy goes out on her own, and I loved it. I loved it. I did. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the other two, but this one was still really good. Like this is my didn't love it as much for the series is like well above almost anything else I've read this year. I love these two together. I love the atmosphere of these novellas. They're just so charming. There's so many good vocabulary words. I love having to look up words when I read books. I have to look up a lot of words when I read these books. And they're just great. They're great. I love them. They're so much fun. Highly recommend if you're trying to get into novellas, start there because it's more familiar. It's like an episode of TV and it's so good. They're so cozy, they're so cute. Love them. Next was my first just like of the month. It's one that I've been trying to read since January. I started it back at the very beginning of the year when I went on a writing retreat, got about halfway through it and put it down and didn't pick it up until September. So I did finish it. It was on my list to finish. My best friend Amy had read it and we wanted to talk about it. And so I hurried up to finish. It's called The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea by Maggie Takuda Hall. And it was just meh. It's just meh. So the premise is that this young woman is being engaged to be married to an officer in the Imperial Army, and she has to leave her island and sail across like this really dangerous ocean to where he is. And it's a fantasy, by the way, in case I didn't say that. I should take passage on this ship that turns out to be a pirate ship, and she gets human trafficked. But never fear, because there is an enterprising young pirate who takes a liking to this young woman. And so it has good vibes. Like, the pirateness is good. I think that Takuda Hall does a good job with like putting sentences together. That sounds crazy, but on the sentence level, I really enjoyed the prose, but in the middle of the book, they stopped being on a pirate ship, and for me, that just kind of ruined it. And I didn't love the ending. I honestly, I skimmed the end. I finished this one at the beach, which really should have been like way more points in its favor. That should have been more like, I was in the atmosphere, I was listening to the ocean, I was on the beach, like I should have been there and I wasn't. I can't like exactly pinpoint what exactly I did not like about this book. It's just like a solid 3. It's like it was fine. I finished it and I probably will forget about it. I might read the sequel, which is a novella about different characters but kind of in the same world. So I possibly would read that, but I'm not sure. I liked the world. I liked kind of what was going on, but it felt a little bit repetitive sometimes. Like, the pacing, I think, was really off because, like I said, they stopped being on a pirate ship in the middle. And then there's like this interlude that I was not a fan of, like what was going on. Also, it had one of my biggest pet peeves in it, which is like making up a fairy tale and telling it in the middle of the book. I don't know what, I am not a fairy tale person. I don't really care for fairy tales. I was not a Grimm's, fairy tales child. I was reading mythology. I was reading Greek mythology as a child. So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe like, my brain is rotted against it, but like I never have been a huge fan of fairy tales, and I really am not a fan of authors like inventing them. So that like there was a couple of them like in a row that just like really bored the hell out of me, and I was not really a fan of it. It's just I don't know, whatever. Next up, the next book that I read at the beach, which is Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon by Mizuki Sugimura. I picked it up at the bookstore. It was an acclaimed bestseller in Japan for fans of Haruki Murakami. And let me tell you what, I know it's a hot take that I enjoy Haruki Murakami books. I'm not stupid, okay? I read 1Q84 by Murakami, and that's like a huge fucking book. I read the whole thing. I enjoyed the whole thing. At the same time, I was like, what's with this dude and boobs? Like, the way he writes women is kind of weird. The things going on in his head are kind of weird, but like, he's a man, so like, what do you guys expect? Stephen King is also weird. You have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. That said, this book it's by a woman, and it's said to be, for fans of. And I do think there was that kind of energy. It didn't go quite as far into the weird and the obscure as Murakami does, which is kind of like what I like about him. Like, I read 1Q84 just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I like that. I like fucked up things. This had some fucked up stuff, and I will say, so it's structured as like vignettes. So each chapter is almost like a short story, but they all revolve around these people who for one night can talk with the dead. There's like this organization run by a teen boy who wears a nice coat, and he sets up these meetings between the living and the dead. And there's like a lot of stipulations and a lot of rules, which really kind of raises the stakes. I won't get into all that now, but I thought the rules around it were really cool. So the first like two stories, I was just like, oh, this is kind of okay. It kind of reminded me of this other book I read and really loved. What You're Looking For Is in the Library. But so like each story is like its own thing, but revolves around like one character or one place that keeps coming up in all of them. And so I really liked that aspect. I think that aspect was really cool. The first like two stories, I was like, okay, like they were interesting characters. Like the first one I didn't love. The second one I was like, okay, this is kind of getting a little bit more interesting. By the third, things went left real quick. And I loved that. I loved the like rapid change of pace. I would probably revisit that is what I would say. It was really compelling. The one central character who kept coming up in all of them, I liked the way that we got to like explore who he was and what he was about over the course of these stories. And each story is told from the perspective of the person who's coming to him. So he's, a stranger to all of them, but each story you get like a little bit more information about him, which I thought was really cool. Way to kind of divulge his information. And at the end, like you get a fuller picture of him and like what he's doing, which was really cool. It did get really dark really quickly, like I said, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed a lot thinking about. There was in particular one story about two teenage girls that was just really compelling to me. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, she's cooking here. Let's see what's going on. So highly enjoyed. The style was fun. The prose was I feel like I can't judge prose in translation because I never know if like the things that I like or don't like are translator choice or if they're like me picking up on a cultural difference in writing because like I said, like this book was originally published in Japan. And so I'm never like really judged prose very much when I read translation just because I am not well versed enough in translation or in languages in general to make any kind of like, blanket statement on that. But I found the way the story was structured to be really cool. I found the plot to be really good. The characters were very interesting. And I liked how it like all came full circle at the end. So great book. Highly recommend. Lost Souls Meet Under a Full Moon. Great book. Okay, so the next two I read back to back. I didn't anticipate that would be relevant to what ended up happening, but so two classics I read, had never read, had always wanted to read. First one was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and the second was Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. And it was really interesting to like read them against each other and to like be because I think they're written very close to the same time period. I think maybe Go Tell It on the Mountain is like maybe a few years younger. I think that was maybe released in the 60s, and I think Bell Jar was in the 50s, but like really close together, both set in New York around the same time. And so it was really interesting to like have them kind of in conversation with each other in my head as I was reading. I read Bell Jar first. It was one that I've always like tried to get to, but I will say, I think the reason I never read it before now was because I never felt like I was in a mentally stable enough place to read the Bell Jar. And like after I read it, I was like, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be as far as like mental health and like triggering material, I guess. But I do think if I would have read it at any other time in my life, maybe we would be having a problem. So I'm glad that I waited. Like I said, I've said it before. I think you read books when you're supposed to read them. And so I finally got up the bravery to read this one. And I enjoyed it. It was a very confrontational book, which I really enjoy. I love when I'm reading something and I disagree with a lot of the stuff that is being said, or I disagree with the narrator or with the main character a lot. I like the sort of combat that goes on between me and the character in a book like this. So if you're unfamiliar, it's basically a coming of age story about our young narrator who is spending a summer maybe in New York. Her name is Esther Greenwood, and she's a complicated young lady. So she is in college and she's taking the semester to be at a fashion magazine, to be a writer for a fashion magazine, an internship. And I found it really compelling, like how similar her experience was to like influencer culture now, which this is like 60 years, 70 years removed, right? So I found it very funny how much overlap there seemed to be in how influencers act and how she saw other people around her acting that were part of this program. So that was really interesting. Following this summer in New York, she has a sort of mental break and a downward spiral with her mental health. She ends up being institutionalized. She ends up having shock therapy, and it's a very unsettling book just because of like the nature of the content. But I'm going to say something controversial. And there are no oppression Olympics. I believe that anybody's worst thing that could ever happen to them is different from anybody else's, and etc. and so forth. But there's like a Florence Welch song where the line is, I'm screaming in the middle of the street with the absolute conviction of someone who's never actually had anything bad ever happen to them. And that's what I felt like girls who have never really had anything bad ever actually happen to them would really like, those were the kind of girls that enjoyed this book a lot and like found a lot of like meaning in this book, which good for you. Good for you. I love that for you. That's wonderful. However, I've been traumatized. So I I was just like, and why do you feel this way? And I know that's like not correct, right? Like mental health, it doesn't have to be caused by anything. Like it's just brain chemistry, whatever. But as someone who has experienced like traumatic events in my life, I found myself like really confused that nothing happened to her to kind of trigger this spiral. It was just sort of like maybe the way she was made, which like it's good for me to read that and to like be able to like have some some empathy and some sympathy with people who have mental health that is not related to any sort of experience but is just like, you know, part of their chemical makeup, which again, it's not Oppression Olympics. It's not, I'm not trying to make any sort of comment about that, but I'm saying that this book made me think of that line in Florence and the Machine. So do with that what you will. I did enjoy the book. I do have some thoughts about the fig metaphor, which I will revisit shortly in another video. But yeah, it didn't resonate with me in the way that I was expecting it to resonate with me. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was interesting. I think more people should read coming of age books, and I will be making a video in the future about how desperately some of you need to read coming of age stories. But overall, I enjoyed it. And then to read Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin directly after, I think that was like an interesting, I wouldn't even say like a paradox or a parallel. Like I think they were very much in saying kind of similar things about similar experiences. Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. I have just gotten into James Baldwin this year. I read Giovanni's Room back in April, I think. Loved it. Oh my god. I read that book and I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why have you never read James Baldwin? I'm on it now, girl. So I read Go Tell It on the Mountain, which is another coming of age story about John Grimes, who is a young black male living in Harlem around the 50s or 60s. I know it was released in the 60s. A lot of books like these don't actually tell you what time it is because it was contemporary and, you know. So I think probably 50s or 60s is also when the story is set. Possibly could have been in the 40s because much like The Bell Jar, this is a semi-autobiographical novel. So basically Baldwin and Plath kind of fictionalized some things in their real lives and used that as material to create some of the plot and characters that we read about in these books. So it can't be taken as like this is what happened to James Baldwin, but it is very informed by his childhood and his upbringing. So now that I'm saying that, I'm going to say that it probably takes place closer to the 40s or the very early 50s. I'm stupid. The 30s. James Baldwin was born in the 30s. Hello. 30s and 40s is what I'm going to say. John Grimes is growing up, son of a preacher, in the 30s in Harlem. And I don't identify with religion at all. In fact, I would say I'm very hostile towards organized religion of any kind or creed. That said, I thought that that would be a bigger conflict for me when I was reading this story than it actually was. I will say I was really confused towards the end about what was going on, and I'm going to like dive more into like what James Baldwin believed about religion, because I was just a little bit lost in all of like the religious allegory, that I think I kind of like lost the plot a little bit. And yeah, I know that maybe like being familiar with the Bible would help me a lot in reading anything and it like written written at any time in Western culture. But I just don't care to know. I've seen what I needed to see, I've heard what I need to hear, and no more, thank you. So that's just, I'm just gonna have to just be ignorant about that. And hey, I'll live. Hey, I'll live. Basically, this novel is about John Grimes coming of age. It takes place on his 14th birthday, and he has this really aggressive conflict with his father, who is a very religious man. And he has to kind of like decide if he is going to buy into Christianity and to Black American culture and kind of give up what is alluded as like his homosexual nature. They never actually like go into it, but the way that he talks about this boy that he is friends with like makes me very, and because I know that's semi autobiographical from James Baldwin, and I read Giovanni's Room Girl, it's there, right? It's never explicitly said, but it's very there. It's very present in the work. So John is kind of like grappling with being able to live up to his father's expectations and deal with his nature and all of these sort of conflicts that evolve from that. So John's story actually bookends three other stories, which are about his aunt, his father, and his mother. So each of them get like this sort of interlude chapter that kind of goes back over their lives and explains kind of like what they've been through and how they are where they are and how they have become who they have become. And it's just so compelling. Like it's so, and what's amazing to me is Baldwin did this in it's like such a short book. Like it's no Middlemarch. Like it's a very small novel, but he manages to just get like so much humanity and so much experience and so much life in all of these characters. It's just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. I highly recommend getting into that even if you're afraid of religion like me. Um I need to like buy everything James Baldwin has ever written because he's a genius. And I kind of knew that from the clips I've seen on TikTok. Girl, give me a break. But I'm getting into it now. We're getting into it now. Better late than never, etc. and so forth. I'll do better next year. Okay, the last three books I read in September. Also meditations on a theme. I've been thinking about things, and apparently it's this thing, which is Sapphic Vampires Mania, I would say. That's where I'm at. So, first book, first book, The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. Let me tell you what, I initially picked up this book because of the cover. The cover is fucking exquisite. Like, Amy, put that thing up huge. Let the people look at it. It is so good. It's so good. It's so good. In fact, I'm about to take it off my shelf. I told you I was a Greek mythology girl. Yeah. Anyway. It's so good. I'm going to take it off the shelf and I'm going to tell you who made the cover because they are a genius. Ugh. Owen Corrigan. Owen Corrigan, I don't know. I think it's probably like industry traditional for artists not to read the books of every cover design that they do, just because who has the time? But you can all like, the publisher kind of gives them a brief, hey, this is what this book is about, go crazy. But let me tell you what, Owen Corrigan did the damn thing. That cover is one of my favorites I've ever seen ever. I think it's exquisite. Ugh. So I picked it up immediately because of the cover. The thing about me is if I could go back in time and have a different life, I'm going back and I'm being a nun. I'm being a nun in a monastery. I'm taking care of a garden. I'm illuminating manuscripts, girl. I don't identify with religion at all. In fact, I would say I'm very hostile towards organized religion of any kind or creed. I think I would have been a great nun in a past life. I'm kind of living like a nun right now, but like living with women all of the time and reading and writing and gardening and being left alone, sign me up. So I did pick up this book because that looked like a nun to me. It's not a nun, but that in no way diminishes how much I enjoyed this book. This book was so goddamn freaky. It was so weird. It was so weird, and I loved it so much. I loved every single second of it. Premise is medieval France inspired world, not to my knowledge actually medieval France, but there is a castle and way too many people are holding up in it, and it's under siege, and it's been under siege for a long time, and they have 15 days left before they run out of food. Enter our cast of characters. Number 1 is a crazy ass mage who's been living in a disgusting tower with her freaky little demon cats, trying to do a miracle and come up with some way to feed all of these people. Next character, a pissed off rat catcher who's been living in the bottom of this castle and who is the most pissed off woman that probably has ever existed. And I loved her. She was so valid. She was so correct. And then finally, guys, it's a lady knight. Guys, she is a guard dog on a leash. Girl, she point her in the right direction, let her bite. Ah, loved, loved, loved. This book was so it's fucking weird. So basically, all these people are about to starve. As they're about to starve, suddenly their deities show up in the castle and they're like, hey, guys, we got you. We've actually brought you a huge feast. No one saw us come in and no one saw us make any of this food, but we have all of this food magically and we're going to feed you and it's going to be okay. And so then just a bunch of like crazy shit starts happening. And so these three get kind of thrown together. My one complaint is I felt like it was a lot of like, go here, go there, go here, go there, apart, together, together, apart, go here, go there. Like it was a lot of like, I feel like the plot could have been tightened down to be a little bit more like efficient. There was a lot of like, run to your tower, run back, run to your tower, run back, run to the chapel, run back. And I was like getting very tired because like not much was happening. Like all of this running around didn't need to be going on, but it was going on. That's my like one complaint. Okay, I have two complaints. Second complaint could have been freakier because you're telling me you're setting up these three to be a threesome and they don't kiss each other one time. I'm gonna need you all to get a lot more brave a lot quickly. Like get a lot more brave. Toot sweet girl. I want some action going on with like there's cannibalism and there's blood and there's a hot babe with a sword and there's a pissed off bitch who eats rats. Like weirder shit needs to be going on. And there was already a lot of weird shit going on. All I'm saying is we should have had the polycule that we were promised. Caitlin Starling, next time. Next time there were to be tongue on page is what I'm telling you. Okay? Next up was The Midnight Shift by Chon Son Ran. Oh my god. So, my birthday was in September. The day after my birthday, I go down to check the mail. This book is in the mail because Amy sent it to me because Amy is a saint and she's a genius. And I opened this book and it says Korea huge in Korea, which I love. I'm into Korean like art right now. And then it said vampires and I said, "Okay, what the fuck?" And then it said Sapphic Korean vampires. How did you find this? It was made for me. I could not have been more excited for anything else in the whole entire world. Thank you, Amy, for finding that, for delivering it into my paws. I loved it. It was so fun. So, premise of this one, Korean vampires, and it's listen, I will say we're gonna say light on the Sapphic, okay? and and we're not gonna blame anyone for that because we know what the situation is in Korea. Not super open to LGBT people or stories, but I'm glad this one was able to toe that line. I'm glad it was the bestseller in Korea, even though these kind of undertones. Let's use undertones lightly because it may not be it. It depends on what you think an undertone is. That said, basically what's going on in this one, it's a thriller. I've been really into Korean drama thrillers on Netflix. I've been watching a lot of Korean TV because I have to read the subtitles and if I have to read the subtitles, I can't look at my phone. And if I'm reading, I'm locked in. And that's the only way I can watch TV right now, because otherwise Instagram Reels will be melting out my eyeballs. So I got really into watching K dramas at the beginning of 2024, I would say. I watched a lot of like romantic ones, but I just love I love a Korean thriller. Like there's just something about it that just hits so different. And I think like it's just they just like go there. They just fucking go there. So this one is a Korean thriller. It's very like spooky. Like I would say spooky is very much like the word I would use at the beginning, because it's about this detective, Detective Suyeon, who is investigating a series of deaths that's happened at a, they call it a rehab center, but it sounds like it takes both mentally ill patients and like hospice level patients. There doesn't seem to be like a really huge distinction between, like in America, those I think are a little bit more separated in terms of like institutional care. But this one, it sounded like there were both like elderly people who needed like a lot of care, and then maybe like some people with some kind of milder mental health issues were also there. Anyway, that's the kind of the premise. They're at this like creepy creepy ass hospital where all these people have been jumping off the roof and dying, and they're very confused because the clues are not adding up. And while most of the police are like, hey, that's just these kind of people, we're gonna just forget about it, Suyeon, who knows an elderly woman and cares for this elderly woman that lives there, she's obviously concerned. So she kind of takes on the investigation herself. And in the course of this investigation, she runs into a beautiful and strange woman named Violet, who's like, hey, you think there's more stuff going on here, don't you? And detective is like, yeah, what do you know? And Violet's like, I think you should look into vampires. And it, that kind of comes off on Detective Suyeon exactly how you would expect. But so the majority of this book is the detective trying to solve this case and try to figure out if vampires are real. And then you also have Violet's backstory, her growing up adopted in France, and this very intimate childhood relationship she develops, or she's like a teenager, so kind of like an adolescent relationship with a strange girl. And I I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It was very good. She does very interesting things with like the vampire mythology, which I always really enjoy. I like when people use vampires and they kind of put a little twist on them. And I think her idea of like what kind of prey a vampire would go after and what a vampire wants was very compelling and very original. I'd never read anything with that kind of angle. I think the end was like a little bit rushed. It was not as satisfying as I wanted it to be. There were kind of some threads that didn't quite come together the way I was expecting. But overall, really enjoyed. Great atmosphere. It was spooky, it was dark, it was gloomy, it was kind of creepy. Great, loved it. Lastly, I think this book is going to make me act weird, and that's fine. I read Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. If you're unfamiliar with Hungerstone, it is a Carmilla retelling. If you are unfamiliar with Carmilla, girl, pull up a chair. Carmilla is a vampire story. It was written by Sheridan Le Fanu, who is a Gothic Irish writer. And by the way, no one is doing the Gothic like the Irish were doing the Gothic. Let's just, Oscar Wilde, Picture of Dorian Gray, Irish. Bram Stoker's Dracula, Irish. Anything Sheridan Le Fanu wrote, Irish. And that guy was like writing Gothic in a, I, that's a story for another time. We're talking about Carmilla. So Carmilla came out Victorian era. If I'm not mistaken, it came out before Dracula. I should do my research in the future, and maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm just gonna leave you guys to Google stuff on your own. I think it came out before Dracula. It's a short novella about a young girl and her, I think it's just her father. She and her father are at their vacation home. She's desperately lonely. She starts having these weird dreams about something being in her room and like black cats and like spooky stuff. And then this young lady comes to them and she is injured and she needs to like stay with them to recoup, and it's Carmela and the main character whose name I'm forgetting, and that's totally has nothing to do with anything about who I am as a person, start up this beautiful friendship. And Carmela is like very strange and she's very protective and she's very intense, and it is it's so lesbo. Guys, it's so fucking gay. I have almost never read anything more gay than Carmilla. If you are a queer woman and you are unfamiliar with Carmilla, get familiar with Carmilla. This was Victorian, right? Like this was crazy, crazy shit that he was writing about. And this was before Dracula, so vampires were still kind of new on the scene. And there will be a video in the future about the history of vampire literature. We've got to talk about it. We've got to talk about it. Crazy book. God, please, guys, please, you have to read it. It's such a piece of canon, like vampire literature, and it's so possessive. It's so freaky. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Back to Hungerstone. So this is a take on it's a kind of a retelling on Carmilla. It also reminded me a lot of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. If you're unfamiliar with that, get familiar with Rebecca. Oh my god, I love Rebecca. This is a story about Lenore, who has been married to her horrible, disgusting, no account loser douchebag husband, whose name I'm willfully forgetting because he sucks so fucking bad. They've been married for about 10 years. It was very much a marriage of I have something you want, you have something I want. Let's shake hands and let's call this a deal. Not a love match by any stretch of the imagination. So her husband is like this cold and calculating capitalist upstart. He's a fucking loser. Lenore goes off. Her husband has just bought this like country manor, and they're going there and they're going to host a hunting party in a few weeks. He springs this on her last minute, by the way, as if getting a disgusting, damp, moldy, run-down ramble of a historical mansion in the British countryside ready for a hunting party in a couple of days is quick work. So they go off to their manor. It's more horrible than Lenore thought, and she feels very not up to the task. But while they're traveling there, they come across a wrecked carriage and there is an injured young woman inside. Guess who it is, girls? It's Carmilla. And she does actually, I believe, use the name Carmilla, which I love. Lenore was not, as far as I'm aware, the name of the heroine in Carmilla. Lenore, I think, is a pull off Poe. Anyway, so this book is very atmospheric. It's very moody. Lenore is going fucking through it. She is just plagued by thoughts which the human mind should not have to comprehend. And so she kind of starts up this relationship with Carmela, where the Starving Saints did not give me enough sexy gayness on page. This one gave me so much sexy gayness on page. Loved it. Loved it. No notes. It was freaky, it was bloody, it was violent, it was hungry, it was intense. Lenore was becoming unraveled in such a way that I frankly think more Victorian heroines should have been. So shout out to Kat Dong for giving us that catharsis, because if you are like me and have spent a lot of your life reading a lot of British 19th century literature, you wished a bitch would, and they never did. Lenore does, and you know what? Snaps for Lenore. Lenore, girl, and do it again. And do it again. Loved it. It was great. I loved Hungerstone. Brilliant, brilliant book. Beautifully written, too. My only complaint is that I felt like the character of Carmela was not quite developed enough. She was very much like Xerox copy of Carmela from the novella, the Le Fanu story, which is fine. I think she was more meant to stand in as she was supposed to be less of a character and more of a trigger for Lenore to experience other things, in the same way that like a ghost is not a character but is meant to sort of set a character in a gothic novel on a certain path. That's very much how I felt like Carmela was, which is fine, but I think I would have enjoyed it more if Carmela had just a little sprinkle more character. She was very kind of one dimensional to me, and I wish there would have just been like one little human moment there. I know she's not a human, but I think that would have been very compelling. So I will say that this book was what I wanted Barry Our Bones to be. So shout out to me for getting that itch scratched. Great. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Great vampire story. It's a great vampire story that's not really about a vampire. It has all of vampirism. It's vampirism from head to toe, but the actual vampire is not so much present. It's not so much about the vampire, which I think was really fun. I loved it. It was great. It was great. Hungerstone was, I think, my standout of the month. Very closely on the heels is Starving Saints. So, and I'm not, first of all, I'm not ranking James Baldwin. Let's just, that is just so far out of the realm of ranking anything. But yeah, that's what I've read in September. Apologies, video's late. Deal with it. Sorry. I'll do better maybe. October is well underway by the time you're seeing this and by the time I'm recording this. Read some good stuff, so stay tuned for that. Like I said, there are more things coming down the line here. Happy Florence Welch album month for all who celebrate. I feel very much like I was celebrating in September, and so we're keeping up that energy in October. I'm still reading freaky sapphic stuff, but this time it's not vampires, it's mermaids. So stay tuned for that. That's coming in next month's wrap up. And yeah, thank you for being here. If you've read any of these books, let me know. If you want to read any of these books, let me know. If you think I'm stupid and don't know what I'm talking about, let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next month. Bye. Sorry if that was incoherent.